In this video, you'll get a quick overview of the Total Tox Burden test. I'll explain the Vibrant advantage and the technology used. Then I'll walk through each section of the test, highlighting key features. I'll also suggest complementary tests and end by summarizing the key takeaways and where to go for additional information. We live in a toxic world. In our daily lives, we face constant exposure to toxins that can impact our health and our well-being. Identifying elevated toxins in an individual can help remove sources of exposure and support detoxification specific to those toxins. Due to the ubiquitous nature of toxins, it's important to test and not guess regarding the total toxic burden of our patients. Exposure to toxins can increase the risk of developmental harm, reproductive harm, cancer, liver damage, hormone imbalances, neurological dysfunction, gastrointestinal issues, and more. Toxins also have the potential to bioaccumulate in the body, meaning they can build up and persist for extended periods, breaking down slowly or not at all. This accumulation can disrupt detoxification, compromise immunity, and increase oxidative stress, making individuals susceptible to further toxic buildups and negative health effects. Vibrant's Total Tox Burden test is an easy, at-home urine test that uses the gold standard liquid chromatography with tandem mass spectrometry to measure 20 heavy metals, 29 mycotoxins, and 38 environmental chemicals, providing robust insight into total toxin exposure. Liquid chromatography with tandem mass spectrometry is a powerful analytical technique that combines the separating power of liquid chromatography with the highly sensitive and selective mass analysis capability of triple quadrupole mass spectrometry. The mass spec machine we use detects elements down to the parts per quadrillion level. How small is parts per quadrillion? Well, if you had a pie and cut that pie into a quadrillion pieces, that's a 1 with 15 zeros after it, the mass spec instrument Vibrant uses can detect one tiny piece of that pie. Now, that's pretty powerful stuff. Before we dive into the actual report, I want to remind you that you can choose how much information to include in the report you download for yourself or the report you share with your patients. You have 3 options: summary, interpretation, and full report. I'll be going over the report that includes all 3 options combined, as it is the most comprehensive. Let's start with a quick overview. The Total Tox Burden sample report includes a cover page and a summary listing all analytes that are out of range for all 3 tests combined. Then, the full report for each of those tests, including the introduction for each test, interpretation for all out-of-range analytes on that test, and then listing all analytes for each test. The cover page lists the sample type and the results interpretation key. The summary shows the high risk and moderate results for all 3 tests combined, including mycotoxins, heavy metals, and environmental toxins. Each test includes an introduction outlining the methodology and interpretation of report, and I highly recommend reading these pages, which explain that for mycotoxins, reference ranges were established based on urine samples from 1,000 apparently healthy individuals. For heavy metals and environmental toxins, Vibrant uses 2 different reference ranges based on available NHANES data or internally validated reference ranges for each analyte. Reference ranges using NHANES are indicated with a caret. For analytes without NHANES population data, the reference ranges are established based on Vibrant's internal validation study of a sample population of healthy adults. Now, for all 3 tests, results in green correspond to the 0 to 75th percentile, results in yellow correspond to the 75th to 95th percentile, and results in red correspond to those greater than the 95th percentile of the reference range. Note the results are reported as both a number and plotted graphically, so you can visually see how high or low your patient's results are. For example, this patient has elevated levels of BPA, which is very common. Good news, they've been able to reduce their exposure from 18.19 in February to 7.14. Looking at the graph, the light blue pin indicating past exposure is on the far left, while the dark blue pin indicating current exposure is much closer to the yellow. Ideally, this patient should get the result below 5.09, which is the reference range. And note that the reference range is set at the 95th percentile. If you want to learn more about the environmental toxins showing high or moderate exposure like BPA, simply scroll back to the environmental toxin summary to read the interpretive comment. The environmental toxins interpretive comment includes the background, associated risk, possible sources, and detox suggestions. The mycotoxin summary interpretive comment also includes the background, associated risks, possible sources, and detox suggestions. Meanwhile, the heavy metal summary interpretive comment highlights possible sources, associated risks, and detox suggestions. Finally, the last page of the reports lists all the markers, including results in the green range. One last thing to point out is that all urine tests should also measure urine creatinine. This is because urine can have varied concentrations. Sometimes it's a pale yellow and sometimes it's an orangey brown. Good news, urine creatinine is constant. So all environmental toxins, mycotoxins, and heavy metals are normalized to the urine creatinine to account for urine dilution variations. For more information, consider watching the walkthrough videos for the individual test. Use the QR code to access or visit the Vibrant Wellness YouTube page. For a deeper dive, consider checking out the interpretive guides in your provider portal. Before we talk about complementary tests, I want you to think about Dr. Sidney Baker's TAC rules. Rule number 1, if you're sitting on a TAC, it takes a lot of aspirin to make the pain go away. In other words, it's difficult to heal if you don't identify the root cause of your symptoms. Rule number 2, if you're sitting on 2 TACs, removing one does not necessarily result in a 50% improvement in symptoms. In other words, sometimes there is more than one toxin contributing to your symptoms. In addition to the Total Tox Burden test, also consider exploring exposure to PFAS chemicals, which are not included on the Total Tox Burden. Also consider the hepatic function and renal function panels to investigate liver and kidney function, which impact detoxification and elimination. Also, the gut zoomer to investigate microbial overgrowth burden, intestinal hyperpermeability, and or elevated beta-glucuronidase impacting detox and elimination. Also, micronutrients to assess intracellular and extracellular nutrient levels, as many toxins deplete critical nutrients such as antioxidants and minerals. Also, to assess for the adequacy of micronutrients required for phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification pathways. Also, the oxidative stress profile to assess how much toxin exposure is accelerating aging in your patients. And finally, hormones, be it serum, saliva, or urine, to investigate the impact of toxic chemicals, metals, and mycotoxins on endocrine and reproductive symptoms. In conclusion, the Total Tox Burden test measures 20 heavy metals, 29 mycotoxins, and 38 environmental toxins, so you know if toxic burden is contributing to your patient's neurological, respiratory, cardiovascular, hematological, gastrointestinal, skeletal and bone-related, dermatological, renal and hepatic, or reproductive symptoms. By identifying your patient's exposure to toxic chemicals, metals, and mycotoxins, you can devise a plan to reduce their exposure, increase their elimination, and promote healing today. To learn more, visit the link in the video description, and if you can't find it, you can use the QR code or URL on this page to visit us. If you have any questions, please ask them in the comments below this video. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a vibrant day.